Testing 1, 2, 3. Got it? Testing 1, 2, 3. There we go. Okay, we got it. We got it. Ayam, are you here, or I got a still shot of you? Oh, well. Hello, hello? Hello. All right, then maybe we'll just speak to posterity. Gabi just came in. That's nice. See if this disturbs us in any way. It does. Yeah. There we go. Chaim's got two links here.
Switching computers.
Oh, that's better. People wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Why you can't teach people how to use the computer correctly? Okay, gentlemen, welcome back home. Maybe just shut it off, the noises. I don't know what to do. Just turn off the volume, yeah.
So no one can interrupt you.
Yeah. It's just making, people are just making so much noise. I don't know what to do. Okay, so we're up to Perek Beit, and we talked last week about the transition between Perek Aleph and Perek Beit, and came up with, I think, some beautiful, beautiful insights about what's happening here in terms of the relationship with Atar Shasta and with the king, and how it is that this special relationship that's created with the Malchus is being utilized by him for the binyan of Yerushalayim, which we understand is the binyan of the Medina, particularly, and not of the Beis Hamikdash, which had been done with Ezra. And therefore, what we have really is a tremendous change, so that in Ezra, as we know, the whole focus on Ezra, the Meshech HaDorot, is Ezra as the new Moshe Rabbeinu, essentially. Safra, Rabbi, Yisrael, same language. We speak about Moshe, we speak about Ezra. But when we talk about Nehemia, we talk about something very, very different. We talk about possibly a political relationship, which was entirely built, I think Rav Dani suggested that it was common at the time for the individual who was appointed to be the yayin, to be maybe the yayin to the melech, the Sarah yayin. It was actually a word for the defense minister, because the protection of the king, which included the tasting of the wine and so on, the protection of the king included the overall protection of the Malchus. So that perhaps it was truly a political interrelationship. But the question is, before we begin, we made it please, a lot of noise, please put yourself on mute. Put yourself on mute, please. And we had taken this time for things that people felt they wanted to discuss, that gave them some personal insights. So we're going to take the first part of our time together to discuss this. So does anybody have any thoughts and continued insights and something that's of a more personal nature about the Derech of Aveda that they note? If not, we can continue, because there are many things here that have to do with, I think, Derech Aveda that we're getting to, but obviously we'll wait until hearing from you. So please indicate if you wish to raise some questions. If not, we'll go on. I see a mic has just turned on. There we go. Chaim is with us.
Well, I don't want to jump the gun, but just in the second parak, there are a number of details like names of places, or the Ein Hatanin, which sounds mythically oriented. I don't want to jump ahead from where we are right now, but
I think it's
I'm
probably
excited.
better to wait till we learn it and then talk about it.
I am expressing my excitement, though.
Okay, good. But as far as Derech Avodah on a personal level and so on, anybody want to talk now, or you want to wait until we do a little bit more? As basically last week was really just the transition and an understanding of the psukkah, which is very exciting. I wonder, how much specifically we can apply it. So if then we could start again from the beginning of the parak. If it reminds you of something, please indicate. So let's start from Pasuk Aleph. Vayi b'chodesh Nisan shnat esrim tavshasta hamelech yayin lefanav. So we find ourselves, as we saw in the transition, at a party. And it was a party that he understood months before was going to happen one day, and all of a sudden it happened. And this was the yayin lefanav that I was waiting for, essentially. This was my job, as supposing that the parak before ends, the parsha before, Vani ayiti mashkal hamelech. V'sat hayayin, and I bring it, v'etnal hamelech v'lo ayiti ra lefanav. Which many different levels, one of which is that because of the fact that I was in a special state of being allowed to drink with them, and they were matir, shtia with akum, and of course the whole isser for drinking with akum, even though where there's no Indian of yayin nesach, is an Indian of mixing and of coming to intermarry and so on. So I didn't have any of that. I was not Ralefanav. The Ralefanav indeed was true about the Jews in the same place in Shushan just a short while before, in the reign of Achashverosh. And that was Lamelech and Shovel Anicham. They won't even drink the wine that you touch. They'll throw it on the ground as if it's garbage. The other pshatim was Lo Yiti Ralefanav. Up until this time, there was no indication that I was in any way unhappy, or that I was the type of person that even could be unhappy. I was always on the up. Again, I'm just going to review the pshatim that appeared to us last week to be the most reasonable. And that something had changed over here, because it was the first time that the Yayin Lefanav was indeed a personal party, in which he had the Shegal that was there Lefanav, even if it's not the Malbim's Shegal, which is Esther Amalka, but it's a personal moment with the king. And indeed the derech at that time was that the king did not drink openly. He drank beyond a mechitza, which may very, very well be a reflection on the change back after Achashverosh, because at that point we find that he indeed was tremendously insulted by Vashti, who said that here he is getting drunk in public, whereas my family, it says, the Kobal Alpha, I mean, he was drinking right in front of the whole party, and he could hold his liquor better than anybody. So that when it comes to Belshazzar, comes to Nebuchadnezzar, it could be that this was a change, that the king really suffered in terms of public relations by being high in public, and so they made it different. And here we have a special party, and all of a sudden the king understands that something's wrong, and I'm bothered by something. He sees that it's not physical. He understands that it's something in my heart, deep in my heart, that I've never let out before. Vayirah harbe me'od, which again we understood to mean very, very different from the way the Mefarshim explain here. But Vayirah harbe me'od doesn't mean, like Rashi says, that I was frightened because he was thinking that I must be planning a murder. Or like the Malbim learns that I was frightened because there's a standing order to always be looking happy when you're around the king, or any of the other pshatim, but very partial. That when a person is waiting for a moment to happen, and that was Keneged Uvachol Yom V'Yom Mordechai Metalech. This was his B'chol Yom V'Yom. That when it happens, there's a tremendous sense of shock in which all of the investment and the mental investment, the emotional investment suddenly comes to a head, and the reaction is very profound. Oh my God, this is it. So I was very afraid. And as we saw later on, he says, Ferish, that my kavana is a tefillah. And here I responded to the Melech, and I said to him, Madua lo yeru fanai. It isn't something personal. I mean, how would I not be affected? Asher ha'ir beit kivrot avotay charevav u'sharel u'kluva ish. That the complete churban of where I come from, where my family hails from, is still going on. And this is exactly the same lashon that basically Esther says, Eichacha ucha v'ra'iti b'ra'a asher yitzat me. How am I supposed to survive this? How is it not supposed to have an impact on me? Doesn't matter how much I would like to just be thinking about you and be happy, but in saying this, he is basically giving the insight into what Yerushalayim means. So he's giving the sense of a Medina. This is like more than just something that I like. It's the cane in the lashon of the Rabbeinu Bachya. It's the place where it's my nest. It's the yesod of everything that I have. And in losing it, it wouldn't be honest for me to pretend to be happy. So if I'm opening up now, it's because of the fact that I need to open up completely, in all honesty. So the Melech, and this is an amazingly disarming question, where the Melech says, okay, drama queen, I got the message, Can you just tell me the bottom line, I like the drama, it's really nice, but now let's cut it, and let me hear what it is precisely you'd like. And that too is like extremely honest. It's almost as if let's cut the garbage, and there's no chanifa between it. Yeah, I like the Hamelach L'Olam Yechia jazz and all of that, but can you just tell me what is this conversation really about? Because it could very well be that the king was makir in the tremendous emotional responses. It's very difficult to hide that. If this is the moment you've been planning for, and you're grabbing an opportunity, you can pretty well figure that someone who is a king will be sensitive enough to know that something is going on and that this guy's looking for this opportunity. I said, okay, I understand your emotional reaction. I see your tension. I understand that you're trembling. What's going on? Tell me what's up. And this we saw already. We had the same anhaga when it came to Yosef, and the Medrash brings equivalent anhaga as elsewhere, that this is something adarabah that is mechuven to Malchus, because Malchus has to be sensitive to these type of things. And that's why in his response, he's saying that, look, it's something really very profound. I'm not going to bother you with something that I can get over on my own. Exactly. The parallels to Esther are beautiful. And so again, the next parallel to Esther, beautiful parallel, was Ve'et Palel Elolei Hashamayim. Now, obviously, he didn't break off in the middle of the king and say, okay, king, give me a minute, will you please? Till I talk to God, I'll be back in a sec. Put it on hold. That's obviously not what it means. So Ve'et Palel Elolei Hashamayim means that this is my tefillah to Elolei Hashamayim, exactly the way that Chazal understand that Kol Melech that we find in the Megillah is a reference to Melech Malchei Amlochim here too. So I was speaking to Elolei Hashamayim at the same moment that I said, Mal HaMelech, Im HaMelech Tov, exactly what Esther said, Mal HaMelech Tov. Im yitav avdecha lefanecha, v'im tov anochi be'einav. Word for word. Asher tishlacheni al Yehuda al kivrot avotai. So I'd like you to send me, and ve'evnena. The idea has to be good. Obviously, I don't want it as a personal favor. The only thing that's personal here is that I was wondering if yitav avdecha lefanecha. Those are two madrigas. First of all, the idea. The idea is a very sensitive issue because remember again, the political context is that Koresh was mevatel the Malocha because of the letters that had arrived. Now, the nature of what his response was is he sent a letter putting a stop to the Aveda, any further Avedas in Yerushalayim, which seems, again, that we're up against the big Mordechai and Esther problem, which is as Achashverosh responds, and that is, what can I do, you know? Any ktav that was nechtam b'tabat HaMelech, ein lahashiv. So if Koresh had already written something which was ein lahashiv, so what exactly would you want me to do? So there's got to be an Imam Melech Tov that has to be very carefully balanced. And I think the Imam Melech Tov over here is much more powerful than just the idea in Esther. Because in Esther, the Imam Melech Tov is in fact a willingness to trust me to be able to handle that little problem. And that was the Ilmola Yigrot HaRishonot and the fact that they were left open and so on and so forth. What's interesting over here is that Koresh's letter only says that there is an injunction against building until I decide otherwise, until it is essentially tov be'enai that we go on. Because look, I'm accepting a letter that claims that the Jews are in rebellion. I don't know that. So this is an injunction. Stop building, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, fine. So maybe now it's 14 years later, and maybe now, I mean, despite the fact he's a different person, it doesn't matter. He's acting as the melech. And therefore, I say, if really it's tov beinecha, because you can't just do this as a political sop, because the entire letter was real. So if it's really tov beinecha, then I would like to be the one appointed to do this. All of this is a brief review. We did this transition last week. Vayomer li hamelech v'ashegal yoshevet etzlo ad matai yeh mahalacha umatai tashuv. This is so striking that the Malbim actually learns that this was an insertion of the Shegal. Because he learns that, look, Nehemia never answers this question. It says vayitav lifnei hamelech, but I thought, we've been talking about the Melech, and the Melech just asked me a question, and I never answered the question. So why does it say Vayitav Lefnei HaMelech V'yishalcheni V'etira Lo Zman only afterwards? And therefore it seems that actually these words were triggered by the Shegal, who was trying to put in some additional pressure on the king. So when will you be going? You know, when will you be coming back? There's nothing to discuss about the essential point, is there? Honey? No, of course not. And so on. So that would mean the Melech all along, it was Vayitav Lifnei HaMelech, and the V'yetinol Ozman was to fulfill whatever additional issues that had to do with the Shegal. The alternative that we understood to the Malbim was that even so, it would be exactly the kind of thing that the woman of the household, the queen, would ask, you know. I mean, I've been trusting you. I don't like my husband to be here unprotected. I would like to know what more details. You know these men, he'll just say yes, and then what's going to happen? So give me the information. Fine, so we have to know those men afterwards. But the important thing is, I sensed already when I got that question, it was over. And it was Vayitav Lifnei HaMelech, and he actually liked the idea. That's why I said, Im Tova Davar. That's what we want. We don't want a shikul that has to do with something that's not Vayitav. So Vayitav means that he held that this was Tov. Obviously, in his position as the son of Esther, it's not so unreasonable that he should actually find that it's Tov. So V'omar LaMelech, so then I got down to the brass tacks. After that, all this fun. Im LaMelech Tov, Yigrot Yitnuli, Apachavot, Ever Hanahar, Asher Ya'aviruni, Ad Asher Avo Yehuda. Now, the meaning in those days, that what appears from archaeological records, is that it was a kind of Pony Express kind of thing. In other words, because each one of the governors, those are the pachot, remember, at that time, the Me'av, Esrim, V'Sheva, Medinot, and so on. So we had different governors that were called the pachot. Each one had a certain amount of independence and decisions. And, of course, a local force, police force, army, and so on. And so what they would do is, if someone was on a national mission, each place that he came would provide protection during the period that he was in that Medina, and then Yaviruni, pass me on, that would be the Lashon of Yaviruni, pass me on to the next people down the line. Okay, so he's going through these various Medinot on the way. So the fact that I have, obviously, a honor guard that's from you, but I also want the involvement of everybody along the way. Now, there may be very good reason for this, because it means that by the time he got to Jerusalem, the word had gotten out that this was a sanctioned trip. And we're going to see very shortly how important the word getting out was and why it needed to be sanctioned in such a way. And furthermore, I also would want an Igeret El Asaf, Shomer HaPardes Shel HaMelech. The word Shomer HaPardes, most understand, literally, the one who is in charge of the person that takes care of the forests. Because I am going to be asking for a significant amount of construction materials, and I want them from you. Now, the Gemara in Erechim asks how it was mutter to take the wood from the melech, because after all, we had that whole complicated discussion, which becomes zogeh very much halacha, what type of things a goy is allowed to dedicate to the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara takes for granted that even though, we could answer him that he's not a goy, but that of course he's a goy, because for all intents and purposes, we're dealing with the Malchus Paras. We're not dealing with an individual. So why aren't we chayshish for the things that we're chayshish? Either, according to some Rishonim, we're chayshish that they're going to use their involvement as an opportunity to create problems. So the more involved they are, the more they pretend to want something, the more likely they are to be in enough control to demand, well, why don't we look over these plans? So the committees become the delaying tactic. That's one approach. The other Rishonim learned the approach is that they may subsequently, if they were involved in the beginning, they may claim that this was our project, not your project, and therefore it's basically not your Yerushalayim, it's Yerushalayim, the representative of the king of Poras in the Pachot Yehuda, nothing to do with the Jews. So the Gemara asks, so then how come he was ready to ask for the Igeret El Asaf from this pasuk? Gemara brings in Erechim. And the Gemara says is the famous teretz that appears in a few places, Benageh Adiz and Yanim, like tearing down a structure of the Beis Hamikdash or just did before rebuilding it. And that is that a Malchus, even if it says, I'm going to cut a highway through a mountain, they don't pull out. Once there's a commitment, there's too much involved. You try to get a project canceled, even though it turns out to be a total bandugal, it's overrun its cost by 40 times. They never cancel it. It's amazing. It just keeps going and going and going for decades. And therefore, the same thing is true. We don't have to worry that they are going to change their minds. Whatever was initially the intent and whatever they announced. Help. Mute yourself. Yeah. Danny, help. That is what they will continue to do. I hope I'm coming across clearer than that. That is pretty bad. Okay, so I need a letter like that. And what I want is, Ashayiteli Eitzim, I want wood. And the purpose of this word, wood, is lekarot et sharei abira shel habayit. Number one, sharei abira. Now we know in the Gemara, there's tremendous machlokas. It's Rish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan. It comes up often. What is the bira? So is the bira a particular makom hayasham b'shem bira, like Rish Lakish, like Rabbi Yochanan says, or is the bira the name for the Beis HaMikdash itself, which is actually what Rish Lakish holds? So in one way or the other, it would mean that the Sharei Abira, it could mean either that the gateways to the Beis HaMikdash itself did not have coverings, which would have meant that they weren't allowed to build something that would be a fortress, and that's what a bira means. And after all, Ezra had persuaded the Melech that they're only interested in a spiritual center. And we know, as the Gemara tells us in Baba Basra, that even when they rebuilt it, the king insisted that it be rebuilt with materials in it that he could press a button and explode when he saw which that's the H that's in the wrong place. Then it would be easy to get rid of it if it turns out that they really were not sticking to the original plan. And when they canceled, because of the letters, it's probable that they canceled anything that resembled a bira. We don't want a bira. We don't want anything that represents a fortress, a stronghold. It shouldn't be a stronghold. The whole idea of rebuilding Yerushalayim is dafka, yes, to provide a stronghold. And therefore, I'm telling you straight up front, we're going to need building materials, either for the Sharia bira, the Beis Mikdash itself, which would mean that they hadn't covered, as the Rishonim say over here, they hadn't finished the gates to the Harabayas and to the Azora, and that was because of the Sitna. Or it may mean that they weren't allowed to build this fortress, which we know from later years, obviously we know from Josephus, for reconstructions, we know that there was a tremendous mitzuda. So I need that too. And indeed, v'avo pachot ever hanahar, ve'etzno lehem b'tigrot hamelech. V'yishlach mi hamelech sarei chayil u'porashim. I came to the Pachvot and I gave them these letters. Now, what is the meaning of Vayishlach mi hamelech sarei chayil u'porashim? Is it that, as some learn, when they gave me the soldiers that had been demanded in the letter, that to me was the equivalent of Vayishlach mi hamelech? Is it that the Melech was sholeach me up until I came to the Pachvot, because I only had asked for these letters from that point on, and at that point the Melech Sarei Chayil U'Farashim went home? Or is the point perhaps as we suggested earlier, and that is that the very fact that the king had sent with me Sarei Chayil U'Farashim, so he was accompanied by knights. This is very marshim, his entry and the gevul of each one of these pachot, and it was meant to make an impact. And the letters, therefore, that were given were an insistence that each level of territory and every different country with every different pachot needs to be involved to the extent of committing their own forces to this, which explains the next pasuk. The next pasuk begins our story, and it's something of an introduction, which we suddenly drop and we get back to later. So what happens is, and what we're suggesting is that this was done on purpose. Vayishma Sanvalat HaChorani V'tuvia HaEved HaAmoni Vayera Lahem Ra'a Gedola Asher Ba Adam Levakesh Tova Livnei Yisrael. He hasn't even arrived yet, you see, because in the next pasuk it says Va'avo Yerushalayim. So that means that it may very well be that the purpose of his warning all of this was to put Sanballat and Tovia on notice, which is very strange, because as we will see when he comes into Yerushalayim, he bedavka does everything very secretively so that they won't be aware of what his plans are. Which means that he wants them to be aware that there is obviously a comeback from what happened 14 years ago, and that for some reason somebody new is coming to take the place of the limited success of Ezra, and it's important that he be known, but at the same time it's very important not to know the specific plans. That's a pretty strange kind of thing. I mean, if you want to keep yourself from the political problems, then don't say anything. Unless, of course, sometimes saying something throws them off. In other words, if indeed I were coming to do something that was absolutely shocking, I wouldn't let you know now, would I? I wouldn't come. I would come with the CIA. I wouldn't come with the knights, the round table. And I wouldn't bring letters to every place where you have spies. And by the way, this Sanballat character is no small, to us it sounds okay, I guess it's small potatoes. But, I mean, the fact is both Sanballat and Tovia are sufficiently present in history that we actually know about them, not from Nehemia. As I mentioned last week, we actually have letters that are stamped Sanballat, and Sanballat it says Pach. It says in the old Ivri print, Sanballat Pachat Shamer, which means that he was the guy that was in charge, apparently, of the Shomron and all points going towards Eretz Yisrael at one point, which is a pretty big chiddush. Not only that, the same letter mentions all of Sanballat's family, and they all have Jewish names, which is really weird if he's being presented here as somebody who is not even Jewish, and he's an enemy of the Jews, and so on. All of his names were Dafka Jewish names. I mean, modern Jewish names. Dalia, that's a cute name. Dalia, Shalmia, And not only that, we know, we're going to see later on the Pasuk, that he was heavily involved in the Jewish community because basically he had entered into families of the Kuna Gedela illicitly, of course, according to this. And we'll see that he was also he was someone that had a lot of influence because he was related through marriage to Ben Arach. There's something strange about this guy. The same thing is true of this Tovia. Tovia is somebody that comes up, he's so chashuv that there's tombs of Tovia that have been identified on the other side of the Yarden. And what's amazing is that over here he's called Tovia Ha'eved Ha'amoni. And Tovia Ha'eved Ha'amoni, the word Eved shows up again because on the tombs, the place is called Miftzar Ha'eved. This is so weird. So it's like the place where the Eved has set himself up. Katzar al-Abad is in Aramaic. And that may have something to do with what over here appears to be just a way to speak about them in a low-class fashion. Because the guy was choshev, we're calling him Eved Amoni. So he also had intermarried. That means that he didn't have a right to marry, because it's if we're calling him an Eved, it means Rashi is Jewish, but maybe it's Jewish as an Eved. It's not so clear. But the important point over here is that these people, I wanted them to know, Vayera lehem ra'ah gedolah, and they were miserable. They were miserable to hear Asher ba adam lavakesh tova levnei Yisrael, which means they had no idea what my mission was. In other words, I wanted them to know that I was coming. But this was cover for my coming. Had I been coming and they would have heard that I was coming, then it was very likely that they would have immediately figured that there's a chance that there's been a turnaround on the walls of Yerushalayim. And that already could be dangerous, as we'll see in the next psukim. Masha'en came, if they heard that somebody is coming on a fact-finding mission, Levakesh Tovah Livnei Yisrael, a fact-finding mission for the king. And he wants to find out what can be done to improve the situation in the land of Israel. Okay, how much are people going to be upset about John Kerry coming, as another idiot shows up? It's upsetting because maybe some good could come of it, but it's unlikely. So that would mean that he did something very clever. He arranged the entire thing in such a way as to give him a cover. And my cover was that I was coming on a fact-finding mission. And indeed, Vava Yerushalayim, Sham Yamim Shlosha, for the next 3 days I didn't do a darn thing. I just sat around, settling in, typical diplomatic mission in which all they're interested is in their own ideas. Oh, by the way, I forgot before, when it was Shari Abirah, I didn't finish that pasuk. Ula Chomat Ta'ir, I want to rebuild the walls around Yerushalayim, and I want to build a home that I'm going to be living in. Now note that he doesn't say, I'll buy it for myself, which means that he wants this to be a diplomatic mission, right? So in other words, I'm going to be building a home which will be available for diplomats coming from the king to live in, and that's the house I'm going to be coming to. So basically what he's talking about is the opening of a consulate. That's the idea. So this is what we need. We need the things that will give me a place to come, not chastrom, I want a house. Which becomes his code words later on. And the king gave me mamish, like with an open hand that was coming directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that apparently had favored our mission. Okay, anyway, getting back to here. I'm sorry for all of this background, but it turns out that it's very important background. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Okay, I didn't do a darn thing. Now, the first thing that I do, indeed I do as if I were working for the CIA. The change is so bolate that it's obvious that what he was talking about was a brilliant plan, carefully calibrated in the beginning to present a picture of somebody who isn't going to do anything, is going to sit around as fact-finding missions often do. They're, a good excuse for free air tickets and hotels and so on and so forth. Nobody ever has to do anything on them. And that's what he got them to think for 3 days. Now, after the 3 days, what do? I get up in the middle of the night. In the middle of the night, nobody knows what's going on. So Akum Laila Aniva Anashima Atim had a very few close men with me. Below he got it Tiladam, I didn't tell anybody. Not even the people who were with me. I didn't tell anybody. Ma Elohai Notena Libila Asot Yerushalayim. So he views his mission as Yad Elohai Tovah. He views his mission as divinely inspired, that in fact it was HaKadosh Baruch Hu who was Noten El Libo. He does not see this as his own plan. He sees this as something that is a direct result, exactly as Mordecai said, exactly how he felt. What in the world was I put into the position of drinking wine that's usher, and of being the one who becomes the drinking partner of the king, and suddenly the whole thing is introduced to me when people come from Yerushalayim and give me detail. Now we have a true listener. I always find it's the kids that listen much better. And And therefore, I don't share that with anybody, you see, because that is my personal mission in life, and I wouldn't share it. But obviously, I don't want anybody to know, because, in fact, my real purpose is very different from my ostensible purpose. So my real purpose is Bilivi, and my ostensible purpose is Lavakesh Tovel of Yisrael. When you see the parak like this, it makes tremendous, tremendous sense. As a matter of fact, we know that the big downfall of Nehemia, Luderes, was the fact that he let go of that clarity at one point, and he said the word Zochreni Elahai Tova, remember me for good, and we'll see what drove him to that. But obviously, if the idea was that it was Notena Libi Lasot Yerushalayim, he cannot be Marzik Tova Lahatzma. And because of that, says the Gemara, since he mentioned himself, you asked to be remembered for good. Because of that, the Sefer Nehemia is not called Nehemia. At least in our Seder HaTanakh, this is a Goyish name, Nehemia. And instead it's called Ezra. Because in being Mavakish a shame, he loses his shame. And you'll notice that one of the big ideas of shame is remarkable. Chomot beveiti uvechomotai yad v'shem, which means that the idea of the zecher for himself and the zochreni comes more from the Asik in Chomot Yerushalayim than anywhere else. Why would that be true? That is something that is one of the grand lessons of this entire Sefer, I think. But it's clear that there's a tremendous drive on his part to be Zocher too, which because of costs him everything. So he says, I've got nobody with me except a few men. Behema enemy, I can't take any animals with me because of the noise that they make. And I don't want to attract any attention at all. Ki im ha-behema asher ani rochev ba. I had only one animal, the animal on which I was riding. Now, why in the world? What, would it be so terrible to walk if everybody else was walking? Was he such a big shot? He can't walk, and why does he take a chance with that one animal? All this we will see when we examine, for sure we seem to have run out of time here, when we examine what it is that he does in the middle of the night, and what happens when Sanballat and Tobiah find out about it. And we'll need, I think, to think very strongly about who cares. I mean, like, who cares about these little people that we don't know? What I mean, this is a book. Is this an archaeological book? Or we need to know the names of these guys? I mean, it's the same thing, the names. Ezra goes through the names. I mean, okay, I understand the names. You're talking about Mishmot HaKunah, Mishmot HaLeviyah. That has impact L'Deres. The names of the Sena Yisrael. I mean, it's halachi. Sena Yisrael. What do you want to add also? The Chorani. And by the way, what Chorani is isn't clear. Most learn it means that he came from Beit Choron, which would make sense if indeed he was the Pach of Shemer at one time. Some suggest Chorani means, not none of the Mefarshim, but the academics, maybe he's from Choran, a Chorani. Chor maybe is just a lotion of Hashivas, because we see that Chorim is going to be called, like it was in Esther, Chori, the ones who are free of taxes, they're Choshev, whatever, okay. But in any event, who cares? In other words, what we describe here in Nehemia are places, are names, are details that have been lost in the footnotes of history, if that. Once in a while we can reconstruct who these people are because we just fortuitously stumble upon something that has their name on it. deep underground somewhere in a dig. I mean, it's like, who cares? No, I mean, it's not as if, they were great kings. I mean, I need to know that they're upset that the Jews are getting anything done. I need to know the name and condition of every single wall in Yerushalayim, in every place. It's amazing, an amazingly detailed, long-winded book, which doesn't have much drama. Well, what's the point? What do we learn from all of it? Okay, so that I think you should think about. We should talk about it next week. And we'll get to those details very quickly when we finish the parak. Very quickly, we'll have a chance, Bezrat Hashem, to think. Okay, everybody, are there any things that you'd like to mention or think about, or we should just wait till we complete the parak?
I thought maybe relate that the whole way that you is built around this mikdash. I assume that's going to come into Tshuva. Seems to relate. Well,
I only caught one out of every few words. You said the way that Yechezkel describes the Beis Hamikdash.
I think there's an echo, but I was saying that the way that the Malach that comes to Yechezkel, and he's always holding a ruler and whatnot, and he gives over the whole vision of the construction, and then the assumption is that's going to lead to tshuva, as if like.
I understand, but there really is no Gea.
What's that?
Those things are no Gea. They're chiyuvim in the construction of the and even.
So I'm saying that seems like, however we understand that, seems related to the need to understand all of these details in the same way. Is not only you have to understand the construction and the parameters of the building, we have to understand the nature of the background, what went into how we rebuilt each one of those walls, and what significance it had, the characters that played into it.
Okay, but we don't really know even what that significance is.
Right.
Okay, fine. To be taken up. Good. Any other ideas or questions or? Okay, so we'll meet Bezrat Hashem to finish up this parak and try to sink our teeth into what's happening. Is there a way to provide like a picture of texts or things at the same time with this program? Like, could appear on the side of the screen? Anyway, if somebody has an idea of how to do that and they write me, it would certainly be very nice, because there are pictures and things I'd like to share, and certainly texts and midrashim that are kedai, which I could send afterwards, but it's not exactly the same thing. So let me know. I'm certainly not a buck in this program. Okay, Laila Tov.